Welcome to Vivid Talk Live. I am your host, Gwen Witherspoon, and I want to welcome you to Vivid Talk Live. I am the Principal and Chief Visionary Officer of Adam Red and Atlanta Branding Agency, and I am a brand strategist, and I love to call myself a better life coach because I want to help you discover how to make your life better. But we're going to do that through Vivid Talk Live by just really helping you learn a fresh way of thinking and doing for all you were designed to build. You can join me live Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can watch on your favorite social networks and on my website, gwenwitherspoon.com. So now today, what I want to, last week we started with developing your personal brand map. And I'm so excited about this topic. We're going to finish it tonight, and we're going to really kind of cover why you need a map and all the essential components that you're going to need to create it. So we're going to do that by after you go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Ron is helping me monitor your comments. Please tell your friends, invite them, share the link, let them know about the replays, and we'll get into it right after this. Make sure you are following at Gwen Fuchsias on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Gwen Witherspoon Coach on YouTube. And subscribe to your favorite channel so you'll get notifications whenever I go live. Okay, so I always want to make sure you also know where to get everything about me. That's going to be on my website at gwenwitherspoon.com. You can watch live, read my blog posts, see the replays. The big video at the bottom of the page is always going to be the previous week. And you click on this Watch More Replays button, and that will get you to all of the episodes. We're at 30 plus at this point. So tonight, I told you I'm super excited about, I'm just really the more I think about this particular topic, the more excited I get about it, because I think it's just so important for all of us to really take the time, invest the time in thinking about who we are, what we're called to do, understanding our personality, the good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, right? Learning these things about ourselves so we can apply them to the work the work we've been called to do, the ideas that we want to instill in the earth, the good that we want to do, the difference we want to make, whatever it is we want to build. I mean, all of those things, all of these components of your personality are vital for you to be able to do all of that and more, and to just be happy and satisfied with your existence and your being, and so that helping you do that gets me very excited. And when I identify patterns and systems and methodologies and just ideas that you can use to help you do that, I just don't know what's better that I could possibly do. That's my better, right? And so I started talking last week about the qualities of a map, right? I described it. And when you think of a physical map, each map has a title of some kind. It's a succinct descriptive text. Say that 10 times fast. And it's on whatever the subject matter is. So I want to help you develop 4 maps. 4. I got the right fingers. 4 maps. And the first one is what I call a flip map. It's in my flip productivity system, but just in general, I think it is really a map to your productivity, really you being able to identify a personal mission, vision, values. And, and of course, if for whatever it is you're trying to build, you have to create that as well, right? It's basic information that you need to build. So if you want to build a better life, then you're going to need to identify a personal mission, vision, and values. And those 3 things together form what I call a productivity map, because they are the foundation of what you need to know about yourself and to know about what it is you're trying to accomplish, to help understand your own thoughts and ideas and help that inform your action. You're going to need a productivity map. That's the first thing. And I talked about the kind of defined mission, vision, values, what those meant last week, and I won't go into that too much today. I won't go into those definitions right now, but what I want to do is go back to kind of do a real quick overview. There's 3 other maps. So the first map is your productivity map. The next is your identity map, your influence map, and your impact map. Right. So I'm suggesting that because I think those are the 3 primary dimensions of your personality, and and they inform and impact how you build, what it is you want to build, and just even your own style and flavor and the way that you actually function right in the earth. And so if you can create a map of those things. A map is something that is suggestive. And I also want to I'm still trying to convince you of why you need to create these maps. And I have 3 points that I want to make about that. And one is a map really kind of presents all of the components of your personal brand in a simple and visual way. And you think about any map, the most complex topography of, the earth is made simpler with a map. And it has a title, it has direction, so it shows you, what's due north. It has a legend of the symbols that help you understand how you can measure distance, how you can even recognize topography when it's a this is a hilly area, this is a desert. Like, it helps you understand visually and simply so that you can read the map accurately, right? And it can provide you with direction. And then it also speaks to distance and scale and dimension, and it has labels along the way that would help you know when you've hit a milestone, right? So I think you need to create these maps for yourself, for your personal brand. And I think you definitely want to get into, and I mentioned it before, you want to get to the place where you can write hundreds of pages about your vision and where you're going, where you're headed, because a full, rich life, that could be easily done. But you don't have to start there. I think if you start with some visual representation of your brand, it gives you some really great insight that you can use to build on and that you can refer back to very quickly in the middle of any situation. You can start off your day just taking a glance at your maps to help you understand what it is you're trying to do, what it is you bring to the situation, what you're trying to develop. And I think you can use it to celebrate every aspect of your personality and who you are and what you have to offer, so that it can bring you some encouragement throughout the day. It can provide you with direction. It can also provide some correction. It can help you understand, no, you got off track because you stepped away from your map, right? And it's going to take some time. Like when we go pull out the atlas, right, or do Google Maps, those maps have been created for us, and then we just have to interpret what's been created. Whereas with your personal brand map, you have to do the work around defining what it all looks like and how all the components work together. Okay. And so coincidentally, each of those different types of maps, the identity, your influence, and your impact map, each one of those, I have 7 points under those so last week we covered your identity map. And the identity map, it deals with your unique thinking patterns, your behavioral style, which kind of speaks to your fears. And it talks about your fears, your motivations, your strengths, your values, and your calling. And you're not going to be able to see this really well, but I have these. I love these 11 by 17 sheets. And so this is the influence map, the identity map, the influence map. And you can see very simple graphically. And I think you can add color, you can add pictures, you can do anything you want to it. But this is the framework that I created for myself. And when I walk somebody else through this, every time it's like this aha moment, the light bulb comes on. It's this revelatory situation. It's this, I love watching the light come on inside of them. I love seeing them just the joy that comes from having a basic understanding of some of these things and a way of seeing yourself that brings clarity to where you've been, where you want to be, who you are, just intrinsically. And it's just incredibly valuable. And so it deals with those 7 points. And then you see it starts out with your basic thinking profile and ends with your calling. When somebody asks you what's your purpose, for most of us, that's a very difficult question to answer. But when you think about your purpose in in smaller bites and other terms, clear list of terms, it helps you to kind of just wrap your arms around it, right? The whole idea of purpose is so big and grand, I think, for most of us, that it's hard for us to narrow that down into one thing. But when you start by creating a map, it can lead you to your ultimate destination. Like calling is the ultimate, but there's all these other steps and components along the way before you get to that. And doing an identity map is going to help you outline that and understand it better. Then the other is your influence map. So your influence map, we start with thinking on every single one of them, but we're starting with thinking from a different perspective. So here we're thinking, if under your influence map, this is about how you influence other people, right? The identity is who you are intrinsically. Influence is around how who you are influences others. Okay. And so this is when we talk about thinking from an influence standpoint, we're talking more about your ideas. What kinds of ideas are you using to influence people? What is your ultimate objective? In under identity, we talked about motivations, and motivations is around what's the thing intrinsically just inside that makes you move, that gets you going. And so once you're going, what is your objective when you're dealing with other people? Right? And then we talked about roadblocks. So your fears on the identity map can create some roadblocks for you. So what are those roadblocks that you keep hitting, right, over and over again? When you look at that, and it'll help you figure out some strategies for how you can get around them, how you can eliminate, how you can minimize, right? Then the other one is under your influence map, how you are perceived by other people. And we all have these things people say about us, and we hear it over and over and over and over again. And in some cases that can be really damaging. In other cases, it can be very positive, but it's the things that people say most about you. I think if we pay attention on the negative and on the positive side, we can come out really strong and having a real clear understanding of how we're perceived by others. And that also, those are like little instructions along the path to help us to fully understand who we are and what it is we're trying to accomplish and how we want to really make our mark and influence people. And then the other one is, your next step is message. What do I want to say, right? All these other things, who I am and how I influence people, my ideas, my objectives, the roadblocks that I constantly hit, how I'm perceived by other people, all these things can inform what my message should be when I'm talking to and dealing with other people, when I'm creating content, when I am building a business, when, just everything, when I'm starting a conversation, when I'm engaging with other people. These are the kind of messages that I want to get across. Sometimes you have to work at that. Like, it's not, for most of us, we don't just wake up every day and we're able to just get up and give a speech. I think they say that public speaking is like most people's biggest fear. And so when you have a more license and more of a grasp around who you are and what it is you have to really offer, standing up and talking in front of people can be easier. And standing up may not be physically in front of people, but it could be in any kind of a leadership role, in writing a blog, in doing social media, in your business messaging. All those things can be made a little bit easier when you understand these other elements. And then your role in groups. Some of us instinctively, we all instinctively behave a certain way in groups. Most of us, we're not comfortable in groups, especially groups of strangers. I'm an incredibly extroverted personality, gregarious, all of those things. But even I am uncomfortable in groups of strangers. But when I'm in a group and I have a purpose in that group, then I'm a lot more comfortable. I'll step up, and so how do you behave typically, normally, instinctively when you're in groups of people? And what's your objective when you get in those groups? And then what's your point of influence? What's your primary point of influence? For me, my primary point of influence, and it's interesting, I pulled these sheets out right before the show started, and my ultimate point of influence is laying foundations. And I was like, oh yeah, that's it. And it also made me pull out my flip worksheets. We've been talking about the flip worksheets in the Born to Produce series, and I have mine all typed out because I have these. I have some fillable PDF versions of them, and this is also a really powerful tool. I remember pulling this out, and I was talking through the worksheets with someone for them. I want to help them understand how to use the worksheets. So I pulled mine out as an example, and I pulled out my play worksheet and looked at the time. Like, the play formula is strengths plus meaning divided by time equals play, right? Play is effectively doing while delightfully being. And I had written my strengths, I'd written out my values, the things that I find meaningful. And I looked at time and how I want to spend my time. And when I started reading through what I had written, I'm talking almost 2 years ago, well, a year and a half ago, it brought me to tears because I was like, yes, that's what I really want. And when I look at this, that my ultimate point of influence is laying foundations, I was like, okay, all of that is making sense. And when I look at that against how I'm spending my time now, what I want, what I'm frustrated with, what, the adjustments I'm trying to make, the pivots I need to do, like, when I compare all of that, it encourages me and it gives me courage. It encourages me, gives me joy, gives me happiness. It helps me know that I'm going in the right direction, but it also infuses me with more courage to make very clear decisions that I'm kind of wrestling with, right? There's some things that I feel like I should go this way, but if I go that way, that feels so it feels so unsure because I haven't been that way. It's like I believe a certain thing about my future, and I feel like if I walk through this particular door, that I will be going in the right direction, but it's still harder to make the decision, right? Because it's still unknown. As much as I'm comfortable with the unknown, I'm also there's a certain reservation still, and a certain our brains are trying to keep us safe. So our brains kind of shut down when it comes to new things and change. It kind of fights us a little bit, a lot. But when I read things like this, when I look at my map, when I look at my identity map, when I look at my influence map, I'm like, okay, I'm going in the right direction. And okay, I can make this decision and feel confident that it's the right one, even if it feels unsettling and I'm still unsure because I haven't gone that way before, right? Anyway, so I love that. I love that about them. But so I was talking about why you need a map, why you need a personal brand map. So first is you want to present all the components of your personal brand in a simple visual way. I showed you what the map that I've created, what that looks like. And you can see how simple it is. And it's just circles and shapes with simple words in them and phrases. Nothing complicated, nothing long and drawn out, but very basic, but it does cover each of those 7 areas, right? And there's 3 different maps, okay? And then another reason that you need a personal brand map is you really want to bring order to the complexity of who you are, who you're trying to reach, and what you want to accomplish. Order it creates security. It creates confidence, like I talked about. Order, for me, order makes me feel invincible. It makes me feel like that anything that I want to do is possible. When I kind of see where things fit and discover components and learn new steps and understand more definitions and things more clear, like that So I'm bringing order. I'm like, okay, this is where that fits. I'm making sense of something that's big and huge and just unknown and new and fresh. And so, every change, I'm learning how to maneuver through the nuances of all the complexities of our daily life. When I can bring order to that, and when you can bring order to that for yourself, it's going to infuse you with strength. It's going to make you feel powerful. And then the third reason that you need a personal brand map is it's going to help reveal patterns and relationships. And I just mentioned, so when I look over what I've written in my flip worksheets, when I look over what the basics that I've written on my maps, when I look at all of those things, they are helping me to make connections and see the relationships between all of these different complex elements. And as I am doing that, it's just really, it's like a puzzle. It's like putting the puzzle together and helping me to get a clearer view. It's helping me to make my vision vivid. Because, and I mentioned last week that, you know, people that invest money in businesses and in ventures, they are more than likely interested in, they want to know your idea, they want to know if it's viable, but ultimately they're going to make their decision based on you, who you are. They're going to bet on the jockey, not the horse. They're going to bet on, and I don't know if this metaphor works exactly, but with a basketball team, a baseball team, like the first person that gets fired is going to be the coach, because the coach is the one that has to get top performances out of star athletes, right? You can have a really great team and a terrible coach, and that team will not go as far as they need to go. And it's really, and so I just want to make the point that you are so important and to everything you are trying to accomplish. You can get the perfect business plan by somebody else. You can get a franchise by somebody else. You can get all the steps and components and everything all lined up. And you say, if you do A, B, C, D, E, everything's going to work out. Think about COVID and how the global pandemic has totally changed everything in the ways that none of us really could have imagined. And you think if maybe you bought a McDonald's franchise when you started or before it happened. And then in the middle of the pandemic, you're expecting that you're going to make a certain amount of money because you've got this pattern that you're building everything on. And then the world shuts down. And so, a brand like McDonald's, they probably are going to do well probably in a situation in that anyway, but nowhere near what they would have expected. And they have a great plan. So I just want to use that example to help you understand that no matter how perfect the little framework is, you're the common denominator. You're the secret sauce. You are the superpower. You are the difference maker in that situation, in every situation, in whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, whatever the impact you're trying to make on people. You are the most important component of that. And so that's why it's imperative that you create a map for yourself. And that map is going to help you fill in what I call the wisdom gap, the difference between where you are right now and where you want to be. And so that's the three reasons. If you want to present all the components of your personal brand in a simple visual way, you want to bring order to the complexity, and you want to reveal patterns and relationships. Oh, that's so good. That's so good. So the last piece of that I want to talk about is the impact map. I didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. And I thought about this because the impact map I haven't actually created the physical map like I have for the other two. And I didn't understand until I started teaching this series how important this impact map is. And I think it could be the most difficult of the three because I think it's harder for us to figure out the end. Like when you say I have a vision, you have a vision for a positive vision for your future. creating that vision is very difficult. That's why we got to make it vivid, right? Because we got to fill in all the gaps in between where we are and where we want to be. And so it's very fuzzy and cloudy, and there's all these things that are obstructing the view, your ultimate view. And I think when you try to figure out or even discuss or describe what it is that you're really trying to accomplish, what impact do you want to make? I think that's harder for us to define because it's not as tangible. So I think that makes this map that much more important. It could be the most important of them all. Because if you know who you are and what influence you want to have on people, but you haven't fully defined the impact, you're missing a vital piece of the entire plan, the entire journey, the entire map, right? It's harder for you to get it to where you want to be without defining that. And we learn you want to begin with the end in mind. So I have a vision to build a multi-million-dollar branding agency. Well, but what kind of impact do you want that agency to have? That's different. And so again, we're going to start this map out with thinking. And here we want to think about really from our worldview. What is your worldview? And you have to kind of start there because that's going to help inform the kind of impact you want to have. If you think that the world is really small and you think that what's going on in your local area and your community is the most important thing, then you're going to have a certain kind of impact, right? If you think that the world is big and there's plenty for everyone, and the more people, the better, and that's another worldview. If you think that the world, if you look at the world from a spiritual standpoint, from a biblical standpoint, from a whatever, that's going to inform the kind of impact that you want to have. Okay. And then the next is your tribe. And this is interesting because we keep, there was a minute there where finding your tribe was kind of trendy, right? And a tribe really is defined. It's a socially, ethnically, politically, and I added, or a culturally cohesive group. Like when I think of a tribe in the modern sense, I think I'm finding my people. Like I'm finding people that understand who I am. They understand how I live. They speak the same language. They talk like me. They dress like me. They look like me, right? That's your tribe. And I think it's super important to define who your tribe is, because the tribe also has a definite, they have an influence. They influence your impact. Okay. And then the third thing is your territory. What is your sphere of influence, your territory? Where are you supposed to be operating? In business, I'm in a marketing agency business. In the agency business, oftentimes people are looking to a certain industry. That's their sphere of influence. I do marketing for doctors. I do marketing for CPAs. They'll pick, a specific sphere of influence. You might say, my sphere of influence is children. My sphere is I want to help single mothers, or just defining what's your territory. Where do they live? Single mothers in urban communities, single mothers in the rural areas. Like, where exactly do you feel like is your specific territory? And then your innovations and your solutions. There are some specific things that you do that nobody else does. And even if they do something similar, or they even try to use the same principles and do the same thing, they're not going to do it exactly the same way that you will, because you are bringing yourself to it. You're bringing who you are. You're bringing how you influence to the table. But you want to define for yourself, what are your innovations? What specific solutions can you bring to the situation, to the problems that you're trying to solve for the people that you want to influence? I have my vivid model is an innovation that I've created that helps me explain my thought process and ideas, and a system, a brain hack, I like to call it, for how you can kind of break down some more difficult ideas and actually use them a little more easily in your life. So what do you have? And I think you don't have to force an innovation. I think you just figure out carefully, thoughtfully, what is it that you bring to the table? And innovation is not necessarily something that no one else is doing at all. Other people, other coaches especially, have acronyms that they use to share concepts. So my vivid model is not something that nobody's ever done. No one's ever put it together that way, probably. And even if they have, it came from me. And so I have created things that I know that didn't come from anywhere, but out of my own mind and heart. And I looked up and so-and-so's doing the exact same thing. Well, but you know what? They didn't distribute it the same way. They didn't teach it the same way. They didn't explain it the same way, but they made the same thing. They say there's nothing new under the sun. Like, ideas are a dime a dozen. Just because somebody has the same idea that doesn't mean they stole it from you. Doesn't mean that that you didn't create it, right? Like, you both created it, but how you use it, how you implement it is going to be so different, and you're going to have a different impact because you're bringing yourself to it. And then the next one is wealth. What impact do you want to have on your own money, on somebody else's? And wealth is not just money. Wealth is about abundance. We want to create abundance in our lives. That's what a better life is about. It's about an abundant, plentiful life. And that life can be defined in a number of terms. Like it could be financial security, it's purposeful living, it's mental, physical, and spiritual health. That is true wealth. All of those things combined. It's living your life at play, basically, essentially. And it is also, let me see, I got my notes written up here, scribbled in a bunch of different ways. So wealth, it's about abundance. It's about your financial security. And this is something I was thinking about when I was writing this down. When I speak to my clients who are starting businesses or operating businesses, oftentimes I will say, how much money do you want to make? And most of the time, they can't answer the question. If you say, I want to make more money in 2021, well, how much do you want to make? How much more money? And sometimes we're afraid to say too big of a number because we don't want to miss the mark. We don't want to fail miserably. And then sometimes we don't want to name a number because we don't want to limit ourselves, right? And but I think sometimes we don't name a number because we're afraid. We're just, what if I don't get it? And you have to have something to shoot for. If the number's way big and maybe instead of getting 100% to the new number, you got 10% to the new number, you're still 10% ahead of where you were. And if you don't start with a number or some metric that you can use to help you measure, to determine where you are and where you want to be and what progress have you made. If you don't come up with a number to begin with, you're never going to know. You could be increasing every year in revenue and not knowing it because you're not measuring it, you're not keeping track effectively, and you never set a number. So you could be making more could be going out the door. And so in your mind, you think, I'm not getting anywhere, but you could be. But if you don't have a number to start from, you won't know. If you don't know your health numbers, if you don't know your blood pressure, your heart rate, your weight, your body mass index, if you don't know those things, you can't really determine whether or not you're making progress, right? So I think you have to create a map of your impact, and that has to include your wealth, the impact of the wealth that you want to create in your life and in the lives of other people. And then the next one is community. Now, I asked myself, what's the difference between a tribe and a community? And there is a subtle difference, okay? A community is a group sharing a common understanding. Excuse me, they are interdependent, and they inhabit the same region or area, and they're interacting for a social, professional, or educational purpose. So a community is really, I think, a broader group that comes together for an understanding. A tribe is socially, ethnically, politically, or culturally cohesive. It's more that's just a much more specific group, right? And I think you also want to understand the impact that you want to make on your community. The neighbors, the people in our neighborhood, they are part of our community. The people, on Cascade, a mile this way, a mile that way, these people are in our community. When the tree fell on the road and took down the electrical wires, our community had a power outage. And so we have come together. We're living in the same area. We're inhabiting, we're interacting. This is kind of a social purpose, even if I don't fully know my neighbors, that I live in this community. But these people may not necessarily be part of my tribe that is culturally cohesive with me, right? But I want to understand, what kind of impact do I want to have in my community? And then the last thing is legacy. And this, what kind of legacy? And when I was looking this up, you got to ask yourself, what do you want to leave behind? And that was the first definition that came to me. What do I want to leave behind? But I was reading something. Somebody said, "Well, I want a living legacy. I want my legacy I want to see the impact of it now while I'm still alive. I don't want to wait until I die to have a legacy," right? But I think if you first think about what kind of legacy you want to leave when you aren't here, when you've emptied yourself out and you died empty because you've worked so hard at fulfilling your purpose and just building what it is you were designed to build, and you've reached the destination in your maps and all of that. What do you want that ultimate legacy to be like? I've seen people do exercises where they'll write their own obituary so they can talk about how they want people to be impacted by their lives. What's that lasting legacy? Bible says a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, not just to his children. Some of us, we're hardcore and we're like, I came up by my bootstraps, and so my kids got to do the same. But that's not spiritually, we're told, hey, if you're a good man for real, good man, good woman, you're supposed to be leaving an inheritance to your children's children, to your grandchildren, not just living a great life for yourself. So what kind of a legacy do you want to have? And I love it too, because one of the definitions that I found defined legacy as maximum impact. Oh, that's so good to me. So at the top of your identity map is your calling. At the top of your influence map is that point of influence, that ultimate point of influence. And at the top of your impact map is your legacy, your maximum impact that you want to see lived out while you can see it, and that you want to leave behind after you're gone. What is that? Isn't that cool? All of that makes me so happy, because I'm like, okay, I may not be able to answer every single one of those questions for myself clearly, but I can pull out information from different places, mine information from different resources, and find out what it is or how I can answer those questions. And what I love is because I've just created these simple maps, all I got to do is just write down some words and basic instructions, and that gives me a starting point, something simple that I can grasp easily and quickly without a whole lot of extra thought and effort. And I can use that to build, to expand that information, to write more prolifically about those subjects with regard to myself, but ultimately it's going to help me get to where I want to go. And it makes each step simpler and easier. And when I wrap my brain around that, it can encourage me to make the next step. It can encourage me when I'm at a crossroads and I need to make a decision. I can check my map to make sure I'm on track, to determine if there's another route that I can take to help me figure out once I've reached my ultimate recognize, right? It'll help me recognize when I've reached my ultimate destination. And it'll give me an opportunity to celebrate every step of the way. And so that's what I want for you. Thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy your holiday season and take just every extra effort you possibly can to connect safely with your family and friends. And I'll see you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, I'm going to ask you to follow at Gwen Fuchsius on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Gwen Witherspoon Coach on YouTube. We'll see you next week.